I sold my family's restaurant to send my daughter to America. Her thank you was to look a security guard in the eye on her graduation day and tell him her mother was dead. She forgot one important thing about the woman she had just buried alive. And I was about to remind her. Before I begin, thank you for being here. For being a part of this circle. If you believe that a woman's dignity is her own, and that no one has the right to take it from her, then you are in the right place. Please, let me know in the comments where you are listening from. It means the world to me. Now let me tell you what they did to me. My name is Naledi Kumalo. At 68, my world was measured not in time, but in the slow, sacred rhythm of the kitchen. My home was a small rondavel in a valley in the Eastern Cape, but my kingdom was a place called Kumalo's Kitchen. It was a humble restaurant with sturdy wooden tables and a veranda that overlooked the Amatola Mountains. For 50 years, it had been the heart of our community. It was where people came for a hot meal after a long day, where weddings were celebrated with laughter, and where sorrows were soothed with a bowl of my famous umkusho. My life was a rhythm, a song taught to me by my mother who learned it from hers. I was a cook. It is not a job, it is a covenant. A sacred trust between a woman and the food that nourishes her people. The soul of our restaurant was a tattered leather-bound book, my grandmother's recipe book. It held the secrets to everything we were, the precise blend of spices for our lamb stew that made grown men weep with nostalgia, the method for our perfectly fluffy steamed bread, the secrets to a sampan bean so creamy it was considered medicine. This book was our heritage. It was the taste of our family's love made manifest. My days were simple but full. I would rise before the sun, my first prayer a quiet thank you for the fire in the stove. I tended my garden, a sprawling, chaotic miracle of mealies, beans, and spinach that supplied my kitchen. The restaurant was my life. But my heart, for the most part, lived thousands of miles away in a city of impossible noise and ambition called New York. That was where my daughter, my only child, my Zola, lived. I had spent my life as a teacher in our small village school before I took over the kitchen from my mother full-time. Every spare rand, every ounce of my energy had been poured into giving Zola the world I had only seen in the worn pages of books. She was my brilliant star. My Inkwenkwizi. The beautiful, sharp-witted girl destined for bigger things than our valley could offer. When she set her sights on Columbia University, a place whose name sounded like a spell, whose tuition fees were a number so vast it seemed like a joke, I had not hesitated. I knew it was her destiny. I remember the day I made it possible. The memory is a fire banked to embers in my soul, still glowing hot. It was not land I sold. It was our story. A sleek car, an object as alien as a spaceship in our valley, had brought a man from a restaurant corporation. He had heard of the legend of Kumalo's Kitchen and he wanted to buy it. Not just the building. He wanted the name. He wanted the brand. And most of all, he wanted the book. He wanted my grandmother's recipes to create a chain of authentic African eateries across the world. He offered a sum of money that was beyond my comprehension. A sum that could build a palace. A sum that could buy my daughter the world. I stood in my kitchen, the worn wooden handle of my grandmother's favorite pot in my hand, and I felt like a traitor. To sell the book was to sell my mother and all the women who had whispered their love into these pots. It was to take our living soul and hand it to men who saw it only as a product. But then I saw Zola's face in my mind, her eyes burning with ambition. The choice was a tear in the fabric of my being. For her future I would sacrifice our past. They came and put up a new plastic sign. They painted the walls a sterile, corporate gray. And I, with a hand that trembled, handed over the leather-bound book. As I watched them drive away, the familiar, comforting smell of my kitchen seemed to vanish, replaced by the cold scent of bleach and profit. I had committed an act of profound betrayal against my own heritage. I never told Zola the truth. When she cried with joy over the phone at the news of the money, I told her I had signed a major franchise deal that would take our name global. A partnership. Why? The sacrifice was my own quiet secret. A foundation stone, built from the heart of my kitchen, laid for the magnificent life she was meant to build. And she had built it. She graduated with the highest honors. Her letters, once filled with wonder, slowly changed. They became filled with new names, new places, new ideas. She spoke of internships on Wall Street, of a young man named Ethan, whose family was, in her words, very important. Now she was graduating. The flight ticket alone cost a fortune. I sold my mother's wedding jewelry, the last physical pieces of my heritage to afford the journey. I wanted to see it. The life my sacrifice had built. The week before I was due to fly, the first tremor shook the ground. I was telling her about the dress I was having made, a traditional shweshwe dress of deep, vibrant blue. Blue, Mama, Zola had said, a strange, tight note in her voice. A bright, patterned blue? Yes, my star, I'd said. The color of the sky after the rain. There was a long pause. Just, Ethan's parents will be there. Everyone will be in very muted colors. You know, black-gray, understated. That dress sounds very loud. Loud. The word stung. My dress, a celebration of my culture, of my joy for her, was loud. Oh, I said, my voice small. I did not know there were rules for colors. It's fine, she said, though her tone said it was anything but. Just try to be understated. It's a very important day for Ethan and me. For our future. You understand. Our future. The words hung in the air. Not our family. Not our celebration. I felt a small, sharp pain in my chest, a feeling I immediately dismissed. He was stressed. It was my duty to be supportive. I folded my beautiful deep blue dress into my suitcase. I carefully wrapped the small gift I had prepared for her, my grandmother's favorite wooden spoon, worn smooth and dark from a lifetime of stirring love into pots. It was all I had left of our kitchen's soul. My heart was so full of love and pride it felt like it might burst. I was going to see the magnificent life my sacrifices had built. I had no idea I was flying towards the most profound, most public and most devastating humiliation of my entire life. The journey from my village to Johannesburg and then the long 17-hour flight to New York was like traveling between lifetimes. I left behind the warm, familiar embrace of Africa, the easy smiles, the rich scent of the earth after a rainstorm. I landed in a world of steel and glass, a place where the air itself felt thin and hurried. The noise of JFK Airport was a physical assault, a roar of languages I didn't understand and announcements that seemed to carry only urgency and impatience. It was a city that did not walk. It ran. Zola had arranged a car to take me to a hotel in a part of the city called Queens. It was far from the glittering towers I had seen in pictures. The hotel was clean but small, and my room overlooked a rumbling elevated train that shook the window every 10 minutes. Felt like sleeping inside a machine. When Zola came to see me that first evening, my heart leaped. She was thinner than I remembered, her face sharper, her hair straightened into a severe, glossy sheet. But she was still my Zola. I reached to embrace her, to breathe in the scent of my child, but she gave me a quick, stiff hug, her body tense. "Mama, you made it," she said, her eyes darting around the small room as if assessing its flaws. Her Xhosa accent, once as musical as the birds in our valley, was gone. Erased. Replaced by a flat, clipped American sound that felt like a stranger in her mouth. "My star, you are beautiful," I whispered, my eyes filling with tears of joy. "I can't stay long," she said, pulling away and sitting primly on the edge of the bed. "Ethan is taking me to a dinner with his father's business partners. It's all part of the networking. The graduation weekend is the main event." She spoke of her life as if it were a military campaign, full of strategy and important alliances. Then came the instructions. They were delivered with a practiced, almost casual air that made them all the more chilling. "Okay, so for the ceremony tomorrow," she began, pulling out her phone and looking at a map. "It's going to be chaos. Thousands of people. I won't be able to find you. So here's the plan. You're going to take a taxi to this specific gate." She pointed to a spot on the screen. "It's a side entrance. Gate C. The main lawn will be mobbed. I'm going to be with Ethan's family. The Crofts. It's all prearranged seating, very formal. So you just wait for me near Gate C and I will come and get you after I've settled them in." I looked at the map, confused. "But I will not see you, graduate. I will not be with you." "You will see everything, Mama, just from a different spot," she said quickly, her eyes not meeting mine. "It's better this way. Less stressful. The Crofts can be a lot. Very formal. It's all about appearances for them. I just want to make sure everything goes smoothly. For us. For us." There was that phrase again. A shield she used to hide behind. The hurt was a physical thing now, a dull ache beneath my ribs. Her mother, was being managed. Handled. Positioned like a piece on a board to ensure a smooth game for her. But my love for her was a vast, forgiving ocean. It swallowed my hurt and told me to trust. She was navigating a world I could not comprehend. My role was to support, not to question. And Mama, she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. That dress you told me about. The blue one. Did you bring anything else? Something simpler. I felt my heart sink. It is the finest dress I have ever owned, Zola. She sighed, a sound of pure, exasperated frustration. Okay, well, just try to stay in the background a bit. Please. This is the biggest day of my life. She stood up, gave me another fleeting, airless hug and was gone, leaving behind a faint trail of expensive perfume and a profound chill. I spent the morning of the graduation in a state of nervous anticipation, my love for my daughter warring with the cold dread that was beginning to seep into my bones. I laid out my beautiful shweshwe dress. The deep blue fabric felt like a piece of my homeland sky. The intricate white patterns, sewn with such care by Mrs. Ndlovu, seemed to whisper stories of my people, of our strength, of our joy. To wear it was to wrap myself in my identity. Zola's words echoed in my mind, loud, understated background. For a moment I considered wearing the simple black traveling dress I had. But then a spark of defiance, the same stubborn pride of my ancestors, rose in me. I had not sold my soul to have my daughter be ashamed of it. I was Naledi Kumalo. I would look like Naledi Kumalo. I styled my graying hair, braided with the silver threads of my years, into a proud crown. I put on the dress. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman of the Eastern Cape. Her face was a map of a life lived with purpose. Her clothes were a testament to her heritage. I saw a mother, ready to witness her daughter's greatest triumph. I carefully placed my grandmother's wooden spoon, wrapped in a soft cloth, into my handbag. A piece of our kitchen's soul ready to be gifted. The taxi ride to the university was another journey into a foreign world. The buildings grew grander, their stone facades carved with the names of men long dead. We arrived at the gate Zola had indicated. It was, as she'd said, a side entrance. A small wrought iron gate that opened onto a quiet path, away from the swelling crowds I could see gathering on a vast green lawn in the distance. The air was filled with the sound of a brass band and the excited chatter of thousands of people. I paid the driver and stood as instructed by Gate C, my handbag clutched in my hands. A mother in her finest dress, waiting to be claimed. I waited for a very long time. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its warmth doing little to chase away the chill that had settled deep within me. I stood by that cold iron gate for what felt like an eternity, a solitary, colorful island in a sea of muted grays and blacks. Families streamed past me, their faces alight with pride, their arms linked. They carried bouquets of flowers and balloons that strained towards the sky. They all seemed to be heading towards the main lawn, towards the sound of the music, towards the heart of the celebration. I was a statue at a forgotten entrance, my beautiful dress feeling less like a statement of pride and more like a costume that marked me as an outsider. My heart, that foolish, hopeful muscle, kept making excuses for her. The crowds are too thick. She is caught up with her boyfriend's family. She will be here any moment. I clutched my handbag tighter, the shape of my grandmother's spoon a hard knot against my palm. I rehearsed the moment in my head. She would come running, her face full of apologies, and sweep me into a real hug, a daughter's hug. We would laugh at the confusion, and she would lead me to a place of honor. I clung to that fantasy as if it were a life raft. After nearly an hour, a wave of panic began to wash over my hope. The music swelled and a man's voice, amplified by speakers, echoed across the campus. The ceremony was starting. I could not miss it. I could not stand at this gate and hear my daughter's name called from a distance. My love for her, my need to see her moment, finally overpowered her instructions. I took a deep breath and abandoned my post. Making my way towards the main lawn was like swimming against a powerful current. The crowd was a dense, moving wall. I was jostled and pushed, my height no match for the tall, confident people who surged around me. Finally, I broke through to the edge of the vast green space. It was a breathtaking sight. Thousands of chairs were arranged in neat rows, all facing a large stage draped in the university's dark blue banners. On the stage, dignitaries in academic robes sat like a row of ancient birds. In the front section, the graduating students, a sea of black gowns and square hats, were a blur of young, hopeful faces. My eyes scanned the crowd desperately, searching for Zola's sharp, beautiful features. And then I saw her. She was not in the student section. She was standing near the front rows reserved for families, beside a handsome young man in an expensive-looking suit. With them was an older couple, a man and a woman who radiated an aura of immense wealth and cold authority. The woman's neck glittered with diamonds even in the daylight. Zola was laughing, her head tilted back in a way that seemed practiced, her hand resting possessively on the young man's arm. She looked radiant. She looked successful. She looked like she belonged with them. A surge of love so powerful it almost buckled my knees shot through me. My daughter. My star. Forgetting everything, her instructions, the ache in my heart, the strange coldness in her voice, I started towards her. I was a mother drawn by the invisible string that connects you to your child. I raised my hand, a joyful, tearful smile breaking across my face. Zola. I called out, my voice thick with emotion. Zola, my star. She turned. Her eyes met mine across the sea of faces. For a single fleeting moment I saw a flicker of the little girl I had raised. A flash of recognition. And then it was gone. Replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated panic. Her smile vanished, her face tightened, and her eyes widened in horror. She saw me, her mother, in my bright traditional dress, a splash of unwanted color in her perfectly curated black and white world. As I took another step forward, a large man in a security uniform moved to intercept me, his movements gentle but firm. Ma'am, this section is for reserved seating only. Before I could explain, Zola was there. She moved with a terrifying speed, her face a mask of cold fury. She didn't look at me. She looked at the security guard. It's all right, officer, she said, her voice a low, urgent hiss. I'll handle this. She turned to me, her eyes like chips of ice. Mama, what are you doing? I told you to wait. The ceremony was starting, I whispered, my voice trembling. I wanted to see you. You are making a scene, she hissed, her fingers digging into my arm, pulling me away from the view of her boyfriend's family. It was then that the young man Ethan and his mother approached. The woman looked me up and down, her gaze lingering on my dress with a look of faint disgust, as if she'd found an insect on her pristine lawn. Zola, darling, is there a problem? She asked, her voice dripping with condescension. Zola dropped my arm as if it were on fire. She took a step back from me, creating a physical distance between us. She looked at her boyfriend's mother, then at the security guard, and then finally her gaze brushed past me, refusing to land. No, Mrs. Croft. No problem at all, she said, her voice suddenly loud and clear. She turned to the security guard. I'm sorry for the confusion, officer. I don't know this woman. She must be confused. She has nothing to do with us. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I literally staggered back, my hand flying to my chest. I don't know this woman. The world tilted, the sounds of the brass band fading into a dull roar in my ears. This was not happening. It was a nightmare. A terrible, cruel mistake. My mind scrambled, trying to find a reason, an explanation. She's scared of them. She's protecting me. This is a test. A mother's love is a stubborn, foolish thing. It will build a house of hope on a foundation of sand. I had to try one more time. I had to break through the spell of fear that had captured my daughter. I took a step forward, my hand outstretched, my eyes pleading with her. Zola, I said, my voice breaking, a raw, wounded sound. Zola, my star, it's me. It's your mother. This time something in her snapped. The mask of calm composure shattered and raw, ugly fury contorted her beautiful features. She whirled around, her body vibrating with rage. Get away from me, she shrieked, her voice so sharp and loud that several people in the nearby rows turned to stare. The brass band faltered for a moment. In that pocket of stunned silence, Zola delivered the final, killing blow. She looked directly at Ethan's family, at the security guard, at the curious strangers, and she announced to the world. My mother is dead. She died back home in Africa years ago. The words echoed in the sudden quiet. My mother is dead. She had not just disowned me. She had erased me. She had buried me in front of the world she had paid for with the soul of my family's kitchen. The security guard, a kind-faced older black man, looked from Zola's furious face to my devastated one. The blood drained from my face. The strength went out of my legs. The world went dark at the edges. I was a ghost at my own daughter's celebration. A ghost she herself had just murdered. The world swam back into focus in pieces. The sharp green of the grass. The unbearable brightness of the sun. The muffled sound of the announcer on the stage calling out names, each one a hammer blow against the anvil of my heart. I was no longer in the crowd. Someone, the kind-faced security guard, was guiding me by the elbow, his touch gentle, leading me away from the spectacle, away from the scene of my own execution. He led me to a stone bench under the shade of a large oak tree, far from the ceremony. He didn't speak. He just helped me sit as if I were a piece of fragile, shattered glass. I sat there, my body rigid, my hands clutching my handbag so tightly my knuckles were white. I was numb. The pain was too vast, too deep to be processed. It was a gaping black hole inside me. My mother is dead. The words played over and over in my mind, a demonic chorus. My daughter, my Zola, my star, had looked at me and chosen to orphan herself. She had not just pushed me away. She had annihilated me. She had taken my love, my sacrifice, my very existence and declared it null and void. For them. For those cold, rich people and the promise of their world. The grief was a physical thing. It was a pressure in my chest that made it hard to breathe, a sickness in my stomach that threatened to rise. Tears streamed down my face, hot and silent. I did not sob. I did not make a sound. My body was simply leaking the sorrow that my mind could not contain. I was a ghost. A non-entity. I had flown across the world to watch my daughter bury me. I don't know how long I sat there. Time had lost its meaning. The ceremony continued in the distance. A meaningless ritual in a world that had lost its color. I was aware of nothing but the black hole inside me. Then a shadow fell over me. I looked up to see the security guard, the one whose name I didn't know. He was holding a small white paper cup. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low, respectful rumble. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me with a deep, profound understanding that cut through my haze of pain. "I brought you some tea from the staff room. Thought you might need it." I stared at the cup, my hands unable to move to take it. He placed it gently on the bench beside me. He didn't leave. He just stood there for a moment, a silent, uniformed sentinel. "That's a beautiful dress, ma'am," he said quietly, his gaze on the vibrant blue fabric. My own grandmother, she came up from Alabama. She wore a dress just as proud on the day I graduated high school. A woman ought to look proud on a day like this. His words, his simple act of kindness, were the flicker of a match in the profound darkness of my soul. He saw me. This stranger, this instrument of my humiliation saw me. He saw my dress not as loud or out of place but as proud. He saw me not as a confused old woman but as a grandmother, a figure of dignity. He validated my existence at the very moment my own daughter had tried to extinguish it. His kindness was so unexpected, so pure, that it broke through the numbness and touched the raw, screaming nerve of my pain. A sob, a real, ragged, tearing sob finally escaped my lips. He pretended not to notice. He just nodded, gave a small, respectful tip of his hat and walked away, leaving me with the tea and his quiet gift of recognition. As I sat there, the hot cup warming my cold hands, something began to shift inside me. The grief, still vast and oceanic, began to churn. And from its depths, something else began to rise. It was cold and hard and clear. It was anger. A righteous, diamond-hard fury. My mother is dead. Zola had not just lied. She had given me a weapon. She had spoken a new truth into existence, and that truth had consequences she could not begin to imagine. My mind, once clouded with a mother's forgiving love, was now a machine of cold, clear logic. My mind, the same mind that understood the precise balance of a dozen spices in a single pot, the complex dance of timing and temperature, began to work. A dead woman cannot be a financial sponsor. The thought arrived, fully formed, a flash of lightning in my darkened mind. I remembered the endless forms, the stacks of papers I had to have signed and notarized back home, the documents for the university, for the American government, for her student visa. On every single one, I had to declare myself, Naledi Kumalo, as her sole financial sponsor. I had to provide bank statements, affidavits, proof of the sale of my restaurant. My signature, my name, my living, breathing existence, was the legal foundation upon which her entire American dream was built. And she had just declared me dead. A plan, brilliant and devastating in its elegant simplicity, began to form. It was a plan that required no shouting, no scenes, no hysterics. It was a plan that would use their own system, their own rules, their own love of paper and procedure against them. Zola had built her world on a lie, the lie that she was a self-made woman worthy of the Crofts. She had just created a second, far more dangerous lie. The lie of my death. My spine straightened. The weariness in my bones was replaced by a surge of pure, unadulterated resolve. I was Naledi Kumalo. I had survived hardship and heartbreak. I had built a life of dignity and principle. I would not be erased. I would not be buried. Zola thought she had buried me. She didn't know I was a seed. With a strength I didn't know I possessed, I stood up. My legs were steady. My purpose was firm. I picked up the cup of tea and took a sip. It was warm and sweet. I left the bench and walked, my head held high, towards the exit of the campus. I did not look back. I was no longer a victim. I was a force of nature. And I was about to remind my daughter that a kitchen without its cook is just a cold, empty room. The next morning I did not wake with grief. I woke with a purpose so sharp and clear it felt like a shard of glass in my heart. The city outside my hotel window no longer seemed intimidating. It was an arena. A place of contracts and consequences. A place where a quiet woman from the Eastern Cape could, with the right words on the right paper, bring down an empire. I did not call Zola. I did not text her. To her I was dead. And the dead do not make phone calls. Instead I took out the small folder of documents I had brought with me, copies of everything I had ever signed for her. I spent an hour reading them, my teacher's mind absorbing the legal jargon, the cold, formal language of bureaucracy. My role was stated clearly again and again: financial sponsor. My first stop was a small, dusty office I found online, a place that offered notary services. The man behind the counter was bored and impatient, but I did not care. I needed his official stamp, his seal of authority. I had drafted a letter. It was not a letter from a wounded mother. It was a formal declaration. A legal statement. I wrote it with the precision of a surgeon. It was addressed to the Dean of Student Affairs, the head of the International Student Office, and the Compliance Department of Columbia University. To whom it may concern, I wrote, my handwriting firm and steady. It is with a heavy heart that I must formally notify you of a significant change in circumstances regarding the student, Zola Kumalo, student ID #. I, Naledi Kumalo, have been the sole financial sponsor for Ms. Kumalo for the duration of her studies at your esteemed institution, as documented in the visa application, Form I-20, and all university financial aid affidavits. However, on the date of her graduation, May 18th, I was personally and publicly informed by Ms. Kumalo herself that I am, in fact, deceased. She announced my death, stating I had passed away years ago in my home country. As a deceased person, I am legally unable to act as a financial sponsor. My assets are now part of my estate and I can no longer, in good conscience or within the bounds of the law, guarantee financial support for Ms. Kumalo. Therefore, I must, with immediate effect, formally and irrevocably rescind my affidavit of support. Any and all financial guarantees made by me are hereby rendered null and void, based on the student's own declaration of my demise. I trust you will update your records accordingly to reflect this new and vital information. I have attached a notarized copy of this letter for your files. Sincerely, Naledi Kumalo, estate of. I signed it, my name a firm black line on the page. The notary stamped it with a satisfying thud. It was a masterpiece of passive aggression, a perfect trap built from my daughter's own cruel words. I had not accused her of lying. I had simply accepted her new reality and was acting upon it responsibly. I sent the letter via 3 separate courier services, requiring signatures upon delivery, to the 3 different university departments. 3 arrows shot from a silent bow, aimed at the heart of her new life. Then I packed my bags, checked out of the hotel and took a taxi to the airport. My work in America was done. The frantic, hysterical phone call came 3 days later. I was back in my rendezvous, the familiar scent of thatch and wood smoke a balm to my soul. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in strokes of orange and purple. The world was peaceful. And then my phone rang, its shrill, electronic noise a violation of the calm. The number was from America. I let it ring for a moment, then answered, my voice serene. Hello. Mama. The voice was a shriek, a raw, ragged sound of pure panic and disbelief. Mama, what did you do? What did you do? I held the phone away from my ear, waiting for the initial wave of fury to break. Zola, my star, I said, my voice a calm, quiet island in the storm of her rage. To what do I owe the pleasure? I was under the impression you had no mother. The university. They called me in for a meeting. The dean. They're talking about revoking my visa. They said my sponsorship is invalid. They said I committed fraud. They showed me your letter. How could you do this to me? You've ruined everything. Her voice broke on a sob of pure, unadulterated horror. I let her words hang in the warm African air. I did nothing, Zola, I replied, my voice as cool and as clear as the water in the White River. I simply informed the university of the new information you provided me. You announced my death. I am simply settling my affairs as a responsible dead person would. It would be fraud for me to continue sponsoring you from beyond the grave, no? But I didn't mean it, she stammered, her anger collapsing into pathetic, desperate confusion. You know I didn't mean it. I was stressed. His parents were watching. You have to call them. Tell them it was a mistake. A joke. A joke. I asked quietly. To bury your own mother? To erase the woman who sold her family's kitchen so you could have a future? That is not a joke, Zola. That is a choice. You made your choice on that lawn. You chose your new life over me. I have simply chosen to honor your decision. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot have the money from my restaurant and also have me be dead. It does not work like that. I could hear shouting in the background. A man's voice. Thin. Furious. Accusatory. I could hear my daughter's ragged sobs, the sound of a world collapsing. They had built their house on a foundation of my love and then deemed me unworthy of standing in it. They had called me an embarrassment. They had declared me dead. I had just become a ghost who could sign legal documents. I have to go now, Zola, I said, my voice soft but utterly final. The pot is simmering. I hung up the phone. My hand was perfectly steady. The house of cards she had so arrogantly built was collapsing in on itself. Brought down not by a storm but by a single sheet of paper, a notary's stamp, and a mother who had decided to believe her own daughter. In the weeks and months that followed, my life in the Eastern Cape returned to its steady, peaceful rhythm. The seasons turned. The wildflowers bloomed and I tended my small garden, its bounty now just for me and my neighbors. The silence from America was absolute. I did not seek out news, but news, like the scent of cooking, always finds its way through an open window. It came in the form of a letter from a distant cousin who lived in a city called Philadelphia. She wrote that the story of Zola Kumalo had become a cautionary tale in their community. The university, faced with a formal declaration of sponsorship withdrawal based on such a bizarre and morally indefensible claim, had acted swiftly. An investigation was launched. Zola's claim of her mother's death was easily proven false, which meant she had lied to her boyfriend's family. But my letter meant her sponsorship was legally void. Her student visa, contingent on that sponsorship, was revoked. The degree she had held in her hand for less than a week was invalidated pending the outcome of a fraud investigation. She was, in the eyes of the American government and the university, a non-person. Her perfect, wealthy boyfriend Ethan and his family had dropped her instantly. The scandal was too great, the lie too ugly. They were a family built on image and she had brought them nothing but shame. They cut her off without a second thought, their brief alliance dissolving like smoke. My cousin wrote that Zola was last heard of working for cash at a restaurant, fighting deportation, her brilliant future in ashes. Her American dream had become a nightmare of her own making. I folded the letter and placed it in a small wooden box. I felt no joy. I felt no triumph. I felt only a quiet, profound sense of balance restored. The world had righted itself. Zola had not been punished by me. She had been crushed by the weight of her own choices. She had wanted a life without me in it, and now she had one. My story does not end with her ruin, however. It ends with my own reclamation. My restaurant was gone, its name now on a soulless franchise in the city, but my heart and my hands remained. One day, while cleaning out an old trunk, my fingers brushed against something tucked into the lining. It was a small, thin notebook. My mother's handwriting, faded but clear, filled the pages. It was a copy. A secret copy of the recipe book she had made years ago, just in case. My breath caught in my chest. The soul of my kitchen had not been sold. It had been waiting for me. Hope, a feeling I thought had died in me, flickered to life. The following week I took a small table to the village market. I had one large pot of my grandmother's lamb stew, a basket of my steamed bread, and a hand-painted sign that simply said, Naladi's Kitchen. The first customer was an old man who had eaten at our restaurant his whole life. He took one bite and his eyes filled with tears. "It is the taste of home," he whispered. "We have missed you." Word spread. Then there was a line. People didn't just come for the food, they came for the feeling. They came for a piece of what had been lost. My small market stall became the new heart of the community. It was smaller, humbler, but it was more mine than the restaurant had ever been. My legacy was not in the ashes of my daughter's American dream. It was here in this bubbling pot in the happy faces of my neighbors. It was in the knowledge that I faced the ultimate disrespect and answered not with a mother's grief, but with a chef's resilience. I had proven that the magic was never in the building or the brand. It was in the hands that did the cooking. It was in the heart that gave it flavor. And that truth, rich and nourishing, was a masterpiece of my own making. It was worth everything.